President Trump is arguing against his own impeachment, not a thing you want to be arguing against. He's been implicated in a crime by his former lawyer, and now the president is warning in an interview that if he is impeached, could have consequences.
I don't know how you can impeach somebody who's done a great job. I'll tell you what, if I ever got impeached, I think the market would crash. I think everybody would be very poor, because without this thinking, you would see numbers that you wouldn't believe.
We recall the market crash when he was elected as well. All of this comes after Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to campaign finance violations, saying he made hush money payments to women at the direction, this is important, of the president. Today, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that American Media CEO David Pecker, that's the company who publishes the National Enquirer, was granted immunity in the Cohen case. He reportedly met with prosecutors to describe the involvement of Cohen and Trump in the hush money deal during the 2016 election. Cohen previously released a recording of him discussing a payment with Mr. Trump, but the president is contradicting that, insisting he didn't know about it at the time.
Did you know about the payments?
Later on, I knew. Later on. But you have to understand, Ainsley, what he did, and they weren't taken out of campaign finance. That's a big thing. That's a much bigger thing. Did they come out of the campaign? They didn't come out of the campaign. They came from me.
In April, the president also said he didn't know where the money came from, but despite his changing narrative and to cover all of his bases, he also insists it wasn't a crime.
Almost everybody that runs for office has campaign violations. But what Michael Cohen pled to weren't even campaign related. They weren't crimes.
Joining me now is Jordan Fabian. He's a White House correspondent for The Hill. Jordan, what is a crime, and does the president get to define it or not? Are these minor campaign finance violations, or are they criminal acts?
Well, I can tell you, Tony, that what Michael Cohen pled to yesterday in federal court were felonies, including the campaign finance violations, 2 counts of which he pleaded guilty to. And so this is really raising a lot of questions for the president as to how much he was involved with this scheme. Michael Cohen, somebody whose credibility has obviously been in question before, says he was quite involved. The president says he wasn't, but I'm sure that investigators, both in the New York prosecutor's office and lawmakers on Capitol Hill, are rushing to get to the bottom of it. In a narrow election, Trump won in 2016. The information that he had perhaps 2 affairs with 2 women and then paid them not to talk, that seems like material to the outcome. Couldn't it be argued that he's defrauding the American people here? And does it make a difference, as the president is now arguing, that he paid the money personally, it didn't come from the campaign? Right. So this gets into a lot of nitty-gritty details, but I've spoken to legal experts about this, and they say it can be legally problematic for a couple of reasons for the president. One is that this would be considered what is called an in-kind contribution. So even though it's not campaign money, the fact that, as you say, this may have helped the president win in 2016 can be seen as a contribution. Whether or not the money came from the campaign, the amount listed by prosecutors was $280,000. That would exceed legal limits from any one individual to a campaign. And not to mention that this money was not put on the campaign finance report that the president's campaign put out at the end of 2016. It was only added later when all of this was revealed. So those are some of the legal issues here for the president and for Michael Cohen. The Democrats, on the whole, are avoiding the word impeachment, the I word, but the president is talking about it and trying to draw a line between his potential impeachment and damage to the economy. What's the strategy there? Well, you have to remember that impeachment is more of a political question than it is a legal question. And right now, Republicans believe that the impeachment issue is advantageous to them. They think that Democrats are getting over their skis if they talk about impeaching President Trump. That's why you saw him on Fox and Friends talking up the economy, talking up his record, really saying, look, I'm in a good political position now. You don't want to impeach me. Of course, that could all change if Democrats take back control of one or both chambers of Congress, this fall. They're trying to be quiet about the impeachment question right now, at least at the leadership level. That could change if they're in control and are able to bring impeachment proceedings against the president.
President Trump has been railing against special counsel Robert Mueller by name on Twitter. That's a change from recent history. And yet, in a new poll, Robert Mueller is at 59% approval rating. That is up 11 points, I believe, since July. And this very same poll found that 40% of people expect that Mueller's investigation will find that the president committed criminal or impeachable offenses. That is also up about 5 points. Does the White House think it's winning this battle in the court of public opinion over the investigation, or is it concerned at this point?
Well, I think there's concern about the legal developments this week, certainly, but I think that's only going to ramp up this public campaign against Robert Mueller that the president and his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, have been carrying out over the past few months. The president has for now decided that he's not going to fire Robert Mueller. He hasn't done that yet, but the strategy he's pursuing is to basically destroy his credibility in the court of public opinion. The poll that you just showed shows that that is not working. Of course, these indictments this week, these convictions are really bolstered Mueller's credibility in the eyes of the public. You know, this is a real conviction against Paul Manafort, of course, guilty of 18 felonies, and Michael Cohen pleading guilty to these crimes. So that's going to naturally lead some people to believe that this investigation is not a witch hunt and has legitimate targets.
And of course, we have to talk about the donors. People who know this sort of thing tell CBS News that Republican Party donors are divided over the president's legal issues, what they mean, what to do about them. I imagine that is bad news for fundraising heading into the midterms.
That's right. The Republicans, the energy doesn't seem to be on their side right now. You know, Democrats out raising them. We're seeing high turnouts in these special elections for Democratic candidates. The energy does appear to be on their side. But that being said, the math, especially on the Senate side, where Democrats are defending so many seats, do give Republicans some sort of advantage there. So despite all of the churn and the craziness of this week, it's still not a foregone conclusion. It's going to give Democrats control of one or both houses of Congress.
And I do want to, before I let you go, play one last bit of sound from the president, a little bit of an entertaining definition of so-called flipping. Take a listen.
One of the reasons I respect Paul Manafort so much is he went through that trial. You know, they make up stories. People make up stories. This whole thing about flipping, they call it. I know all about flipping. For 30, 40 years, I've been watching flippers. Everything's wonderful, and then they get 10 years in jail, and they flip on whoever the next highest one is, or as high as you can go. It almost ought to be outlawed. It's not fair.
For 30, 40 years, the president's been watching flippers. I presume he means on television crime dramas, maybe in his personal life, unclear at this point. Flipping is a reference to cooperating witnesses, major tool of law enforcement. What do you think of the president's line of attack?
Well, Tony, this really illustrates the divide between the president and the presidency, right? The president, in a normal circumstance, is really the chief law enforcement officer of this country and isn't going to do things that would undermine investigators at the Department of Justice or otherwise who are trying to pursue crimes, often by getting cooperating witnesses to provide evidence. But then you have the president, who is, of course, trying to defend himself at the moment, and he's willing to take extraordinary steps like undercutting his own federal law enforcement entities to do that.
Jordan Fabian, White House correspondent for The Hill. Jordan, thank you very much.
Thank you.